Okay.
All right.
So did we get budget for opening, or did I got to do this?
Yeah, you can start. You can make that a normal thing. Yeah. But everyone, welcome to the second episode of our podcast. We finally have a name for it now. Yeah. And we called it what?
Modify.
Yes.
With Trickfactory Customs.
Yeah. It literally took us like a long time.
3 or 4 days.
We have probably 2 full sheets of like pretty solid choices.
Yeah. Some might or might not be used in the future.
No.
Some are very sketchy.
Solid.
Meat and metal was one of them. So it just sounds weird.
That's a
different podcast.
On this episode of Modify, we're talking about something else that I think is I think is a really interesting topic, which is on the subject of car modifications. So a lot of people, again, want to modify their cars, but first of all, they don't know, should I modify it? Should I not modify it? It's probably going to need a lot of money in modification. Should I do it myself? Should I not? And so I just wanted to open that up to you guys. So,
well, first of all, I say 100% modify your car. Because full custom everything is cool.
It is cool. Yeah. It is pretty awesome.
We'll dig a little deeper into that. So
yeah. Well, we got Rob's first answer, which is
I say modify. Don't touch it. You absolutely do not touch your car.
Okay. So we have
is there a disclaimer in that?
Don't do it.
Yeah.
So why would you say one should not modify their car?
No, I'd say modify it, but you got to be honest with what your intentions are.
So for you guys, why did you modify your what was it? First of all, what were the first cars you modified, and why did you choose to modify them?
Okay, by modified, do you mean take apart or actually?
I guess that's also another topic of its own.
I would say me wanting to modify a car is what inspired the purchase of my second car.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I had a lot of desire to, but no ability. So I would say if you're going to modify your car, make sure you have the ability to first, because mine is still in a pile of parts in the mezzanine at the other shop.
What is it?
My Datsun 240Z.
Oh.
So I blew it apart with grand plans of modifying and making it awesome, and never made it to the end.
Oh no.
So it's kind of a continuation of our first episode is you have to be honest in what you're doing and what you're doing with your car.
But I think that right there is kind of what helped guide you along the path to becoming the man that you are now, though. Like, you weren't able to do it then, but you had such incredible desire to do it.
And you still have
that you took it all apart, and it
I still haven't finished that car. Like, that car's still in pieces. I've built many other cars in the interim, but that car is still in pieces.
Yeah. That may be true, but you do have a replacement for that.
True, I do.
And all those ideas that you had then, you can now do.
True.
Yeah. Well, that's the reality of it, and that's again an extension of our first one is having your abilities catch up to your wants and needs. That's a big part of the whole process that people leave out. Like, they take their stuff apart before they know how to put it back together. I say learn how to put it back together before you take it apart.
Well, how can you learn how to put it together before you take it apart? Like,
that's a good question. I mean, unless you take it apart and learn sometimes the hard way.
Struggle. So if you're going to modify it, like I say, you got to be honest with your intentions. Like, if it's your daily driver and what you need to get to work, probably don't mess with it.
Yeah, not a good idea, right? You're going to put yourself out.
Find a project car. And even if it's just to learn and you have no intentions of finishing said car, then at least you can get some sort of a foundation. Like, even if it's just exploratory, to see if it's something that you even have an aptitude for. Something almost disposable. I don't think you should go get some crazy car that you're going to chop up and end up losing all your money on. Start with something cheap, just fun.
But what about also something simple? Because when you say modified, like that, I feel like that's a broad word. So for some people,
but for me,
modified can be like wheels, tires.
This is like a whole like a episode in itself.
Yeah, what is
my definition of modified is vastly different than other people.
So let's use this episode.
If you want to customize,
so what is a modified car to
you?
What's a modified car?
Is wheels, exhaust, some mild modifications. To me, a modified car is there's no chance of anybody pulling up next to you in the same car. Because like a lot of the
one-off.
full one-off.
Okay.
Like make it your own.
That's an
like
interesting topic.
actually make something. If you're modifying something, you're changing it from a
From what it was
version that
original.
you're able to get it from.
Yeah.
It's not ever going to be the same. Like nobody can actually recreate it.
So, in your opinion, or in your like thought process, a modified car does not include. So, if I want to get like a wide body, like a Liberty Walk,
If I can
that's
buy it,
not modified.
If I can buy it, that's not modified. You're modifying it from its
Interesting.
original form.
Okay.
But you haven't done anything. What'd you do? You bought a body kit.
You bolted it on. It takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
That's not a lot of work.
takes a lot of-
So it does. It's like it's a lot of
I'm
work.
very, very
it's
jaded.
effort. It's expense, and it takes a certain skill set in which to do that. Even, but full definition of modified, I would lean more towards what Tim is saying. Like it is like
Interesting.
one of a kind. You're the only one. You literally made it from scratch by hand yourself. It's not the same as what Joe Schmo is going to pull up next to you at the light and have the exact same thing,
same
maybe
car.
a different color, right?
Okay.
But
Like half these car shows that we go to,
Yeah.
if you give me a pad and paper in a half an hour,
Yeah.
I can list every single piece of, like, I can recreate these cars
Based on their parts list.
based on their parts list. And to the point, some of them, if they're new enough and current enough, probably the owners wouldn't even notice. They'd have to like, beep, 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 oh, which one's mine? Because it's just so repetitive and so off the shelf.
I don't think that really means that any one of those versions is not cool.
Yeah.
And like there's so many really good examples of that, but we're digging a little bit deeper here into like what our version of modified is.
Yeah.
Like
so not
that's
to
super
discount
cool.
any of that stuff is awesome.
Yeah,
and
it's
if it's
awesome.
your aesthetic, it is awesome. Like I see some of them like, oh, that looks crazy.
Yeah.
But I don't think I've ever encountered something where it was like absolutely perfect to my aesthetic.
Yeah.
So then I have to massage little things, change it, and make
Yeah.
it my own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my version of modifying is literally making it my own.
Oh,
it's
okay.
mine. Whereas you can't, I'm not gonna, especially a lot of these big name brand stuff that's like Liberty Walk and all these guys, like that's the absolute bar. That's
Yeah.
what everybody strives to get. And but the problem with it is everybody can get it.
Yeah.
So not a lot of people can, but just even the idea that I'm gonna put all this time and effort and money that I've saved and I'm gonna do this and then somebody beats me to it. And I'm just like, oh, then you're defeated. And it's like you don't have anything truly special. And if you don't have money and you can make something yourself, it's definitely a lot riskier because like, look at my Porsche. So like there's people, it's like, this is an absolute work of art. And then the other guys are like, what the hell did you do? You absolutely butchered this thing. So to have that, the ability to absorb both sides is obviously something new for me. Coming off the Evil Evo, like there's not a single bad thing ever said about that thing.
And if you don't know what he's talking about, you should follow our TikTok and Instagram at Trickfactory Customs. And just scroll through the videos that we've made in the past few weeks, and you'll see his car getting not just I feel like it's getting praised
Now,
but also
there's
a
an
little bit
initial
roasted.
initial rush of haters, but now and like after that, now it's all positive, and I think a lot of people appreciate what it is. But these two cars specifically, because they're not customer cars, are like a very clear representation of me. Whereas it's not, I didn't do it for anybody else. So a lot of times when you start chasing name brand stuff, you're doing it for clout and you're doing it to be the first. Like any of that stuff is like, oh, I got to be the first one. No matter what, I'm going to be the first one.
Because you
like
made it.
everything I did, I'm the first. I'm first in the world. Like I can be that guy every single time. Whereas that kind of stuff, it's a very different game, and I get it, but it's just not for me. Like the amount of money that a lot of those things cost is like, my mindset is like, I can make it for less than that.
Yeah.
And we're lucky enough to be in that place, but I get that it's not everybody
Not
can
everyone
do
is in
it.
that
Yeah,
sense.
so
But
I
then
think
sometimes that could be somebody's absolute perfect version.
Yeah.
And be like, that is it. Like I couldn't possibly fathom anything better than that, which I can appreciate too.
Yeah.
So I think like an underlying takeaway from what Tim was just saying is that he made those cars in his vision, his idea of what his perfect version would be,
yeah.
and that's his version of modified.
Yeah.
You know, and so like anybody out there watching, they could take from that and be like, you know what, I'm gonna modify in my vision whatever I got, whatever it is, and that's going to be your version of perfect, regardless of whatever your skill set is. Like, I mean, you have to be fairly honest with what you're able to do. We happen to have a pretty decently talented crew of guys that are always looking to push to another level of space.
Yeah.
So we kind of use that as our driving force to build these cars, like the Evo and the Slant Nose and every other personal project that each and every one of us is working on.
That's interesting.
All the time
Yeah.
to push ourselves up.
But with your kit, I mean, it is a little bit different, but you didn't make everything from scratch for these cars that you have. So the Evo and the Slant Nose, so they were based off.
Yeah, they're based off something, but then
Yeah.
the modified part of it is I saw little subtle things that I would change. So it's like there was already a chosen aesthetic that, like, obviously I was enamored with, and then I made it my version.
Yeah, just like improved on, modified. You know, there's no other body kit like this Evo 2
No.
kit. This
So-
Evo 2
The
kit.
question that I'm posing now is, once we start making kits of these and people start putting them on their car, are those considered modified cars or not?
No, it definitely changed the dynamic of it, because I do have a bit of an attitude towards that whole scene. So, yeah, but I wouldn't expect anybody to try to build an exact version of mine. Like, I would encourage people to build their own version.
Yeah.
You know
Just
what I mean?
do like what we do,
Yeah.
like all the time. We would take something that exists, like say this kit,
Yep.
put it on your car, and maybe modify it in some way or another if you feel it's necessary. Like, you might think it's like the perfect version of what it needs to be, and we like to think that it is, but maybe not for you. But just like how we did it on that one, we changed other things and made it a cohesive design and modified as necessary.
Yeah,
So
it's never gonna end.
It's the same, like any kit, any Liberty Walk, Aim Gain, any one of those like major players, you know, we modify every single one of them.
Yeah, that's what I've noticed.
Doesn't
being
matter
here, yeah.
what it costs, what it's going on, we will change it.
Yeah, even at the same time, though, I did the old new Slant Nose kit on my car, and I bought it knowing already that there's
You were
things
gonna-
I didn't like about it.
Okay.
So it's like when I saw somebody else's finished version, it's like, it's the same as people that are like, even though the car's done, there's still people that are like, I would have done this. I would have done this.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
like when I saw the first one, I was the exact same. I was like, you know, like that, there's certain parts of this that are amazing, and then other parts, there's even things on it that I didn't, because especially us, like we just keep going and going and going, and it has to end someplace, and I have to get on to the next one. So even the little handful of things that are on there that some people have commented about, I had the exact same feelings, but
Yeah.
I have to call it and
Yeah.
get on to the
Know when
next
to,
one.
yeah.
Like, it's like, is it really gonna change it
that
that
much?
much?
Right.
And then the problem is like when you push it so far, then it gets to a point where it doesn't look custom anymore. Like, you're almost pushing yourself out of the realm of like that whole sort of custom vibe, and we got to kind of stay in there, because like you look at some of these, what started out as customizers like Singer and Gunther Works and all these guys, like they've pushed their stuff so far that looks like a factory product. Like we're always trying to like make it look factory or appear that it came from the
OEM
factory.
plus.
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
Right.
so like those ones have been pushed to a place where they're in a completely different genre
Yeah,
now. They're
yeah.
not custom cars anymore. That's
They're their own
they-
thing.
their
it's
own
its
thing
own
now.
Yeah,
thing.
so
So
cool.
for us
Yeah.
as an industry, we can't, in our business, in order to feed the business, we've made this mistake before. It's like back when we used to build a lot of custom bikes, we'd build them to such a level that it intimidated people to come here.
Oh.
And they'd be embarrassed. Like, I literally get email like, oh, I'm kind of embarrassed for asking because you guys do all this crazy
The high-end
stuff.
stuff.
But would you be interested in doing this? You're like, yeah, of course. Like, we literally just finished a Fiero.
Yeah.
Like, because
If you haven't seen that, check those
you know
videos.
what I mean? Like, it's so like we cover the entire range. So I
Spectrum,
appreciate
yes.
all of it, but it's like, you push too far, and then you're,
So how far is too far?
I don't think there is. Like ultimately with our 190 builds, I hope to push them to that point where that it's like, you know, you're here for what I do and like as a whole, like what we've created, and if you can take this and just be done with it, because not everybody wants to build or modify their own car.
Yeah, very, very true.
So I mean, and traditionally the biggest thing in our industry is like, and what we tried to strive to provide is custom cars, modified cars are always been kind of a do-it-yourselfer kind of industry, and they're unreliable, they're breaking down, and they have a bad reputation. So we're trying to provide some reputation with these cars. Like, I don't want phone calls. Like when we do it, we want it to leave and be gone.
Never
so
come
like
back.
the modifications, like the honesty part of it is like, what do you need this car to do?
Yeah.
Like, what are you
That's
trying to
good.
do with this
Critical
car?
question to ask at the
so
beginning of a
good.
project.
So like if you're trying to go for ice cream on a Sunday, you probably don't need 2,000 horsepower.
No.
Yeah.
So it's like, again, back to being
You want
honest
it?
about what you want it
Yeah.
to do. Yeah, we all want it.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
No, it's super true. I mean, you have to be very, very honest with yourself and what your end goal is with whatever you're going to modify. Like, if you want to build a track car, do track car specific modifications, and that means, you know, it's not going to be that pretty. You're going to have bigger gaps where they need to be because you have, you know, flex and movement, and it's built for abuse. But if you have a full-on show car, you can have really tight, you know, clearance gaps, and everything is super precise, super well painted and all that. But I mean, is it realistic? You're not going to take a car like that to the track because you'll destroy it. You know, and as
Very
soon as
true.
you need to do any kind of service work to any one of those types of builds, it's a friggin' nightmare, and you're stressed.
Yeah.
You'd almost build
true.
it too nice for what it's
To
worth.
even use it. That's
What
so
is your
true.
end goal? Like,
Yeah, I think that's very important because I think you were talking to me about, I think it was bikes or something.
Yeah.
Of like when you were building bikes, you had to build it to a point that, or like initially, like you see a lot in the magazines, but like whenever you try to
during
use
the
them,
magazine
Yeah.
era, that
Yeah.
was the thing. Like you're seeing gaps and you're trying to emulate what's in there. And then for us, like we're here just like, how does this work? Like, how,
Yeah.
you know, so it ended up pushing us to a different level because we're trying to reverse engineer things that we're seeing. Like, how does this work? How does this work? And then we found out after we
no
made
way.
it work
Yeah.
that those particular bikes that we were trying to emulate
Yeah.
didn't work. Paint
Yeah.
was chipped, chains
Yeah.
were rubbing, gaps were paint's blistering. So it's like it was a positive and a negative at the same time because
those-
we were trying to like we were looking
Make
at
it
magazines.
work.
You're like, oh
Yeah.
man, how do they make that work?
Yeah.
Like it's just so tight. Like, oh, we're gonna have to put a support here and we're gonna have to do this
Wow.
and like
Yeah.
all these kind of things.
the
And then,
original guys never did any
yeah,
of
and
that.
then you
Yeah.
go to a bike show where this guy's participating. You go up, you're like, oh, it didn't
Yeah,
work.
that was one of those don't want to meet your heroes kind of thing where you're like, oh, dang, like I thought you were the guy.
Yeah.
But it's cool you guys found a way to engineer those things to the point of them working, even though
try,
they were
right?
not originally
And
meant
then
to.
now, like a big thing is like talking customers out of crazy stuff because you see a lot of these cars, they're amazing, but they're not going to last. They don't go down the road.
Yeah.
like you know, they're seam welding the entire engine compartment and painting it, body working it. It's not going to last. It's going to last as long as it's on a show circuit. As soon as you start driving it,
You'll
there's
fall
so much
apart.
chassis flex and little things, no matter what you do, and it's going to crack. But they engineer
Right.
those into modern cars, so it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So then you have to talk customers out of this. Like, okay, you want to drive this car all the time? Then we can't necessarily do that. Like, I can do it for you, and it looks amazing in pictures, but you're not going to be happy with it and having to try to explain to people
Yeah.
why it's starting to fall apart.
Yeah.
Or like, you don't want to get in your car and have like 25 concessions. Like, oh, sorry, you got to jump over that door, tap
Yeah.
this 3 times,
Yeah.
do all this weird just to get in your car and drive it. So it's like a lot of times we're talking people out of stuff.
But you just got to be honest at the beginning.
Yeah.
That's going to be a bad decision. Maybe if you have to have something like that, maybe you should have another project. You know,
Or we'll just say no. Like
Straight
I
up.
literally
Wow,
turn
okay.
away probably 80% of our inquiries.
No,
Yeah,
what?
like,
so
I
it's
didn't even know-
crazy.
I can show you
All day
emails
long.
all day long.
Shoot.
Because a lot of the stuff is just
80%.
yeah, it's like I go through emails and it's just like
Wow.
nope because a lot of it is like you can once you've had a bunch of customers and we've been at it for as long as us, you can pick and choose and you can see red flags in different
Okay,
projects.
okay.
So for us, it's like finding the right customer. So if you come to me and you say, I want 2,000 horsepower, 100% we can do it. We're doing one right now that's like 1,600 horsepower. But this particular gentleman also has boats, cars, all these type of things. So he's very much aware of what comes with that and the cost and the expense and the realistic reliability of creating that.
Yeah, and it's not his first, four-digit horsepower number car. So he's kind of evolved to that point as well. So,
but if this is your first car and you honestly tell me like, I just want something to cruise in, I'm gonna like 500 horsepower. We can do that reliably all day long. We never see those guys again. The only time they come around is to tell us how good their car is.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
Hey, that's always nice.
But if you start, then you do all these other crazy things, and if you don't have a history of building cars and knowing the process and what comes with it, you're gonna be unhappy. You're gonna be broken down. Like, this thing's overheating. It's this. It's that. And it's like, well, that's what you wanted. I just gave you what you wanted. You can't have a race car and expect to go sit in downtown traffic. Like, you got to know, like, and you got to understand. And like anybody that's been in any of this kind of world long enough, like, how many car shows have you been that you see guys heading there at 5:30 in the morning? Do you think they want to be? No, they know their car doesn't work for and they got to get it there. So before traffic heads out, get it placed, get it done, shut off, because they got this whole procedure of things that they got to do.
First one there, the last one to leave.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. And then, I think we've hit actually a bunch of the questions, but I had like a few. Is modifying, or this is like, so if you're trying to convince someone that has never modified a car before, and it's like, they're just like, no, I have a normal car, I should keep it stock. Is modifying cars pointless? Are modified cars pointless? Like, so if you're trying to convince that person, what would you tell them or say to them?
If it's pointless, I wouldn't say. No, realistically, like, nobody needs what we do.
It's totally frivolous. But if something that you want or you're gonna make for yourself or whatever is, if it like speaks to you internally, like if it grabs you and like you have to have that, 100%, you need to do that. It's worth doing, and that's all what this is. I mean, modified cars, motorcycles, just whatever. It's all about like the emotional attachment that you have to it. I think there's a huge value in that. Like,
so true.
When you get out of your car or off your motorcycle and you start walking away, if you find yourself looking back at your car or your bike, that's when you know you have a personally, you're attached. And I think that's a big win. And most of the time, I would say it's pretty safe to say that any modified car is going to do that to somebody. So I think, that's when I know you've won. You're like, oh, yes, look at that. Like just swelling pride, like, oh, that's awesome. I love it.
It's usually terrible, though.
No.
Modifying the car?
90% of the time, we're making these things worse.
True.
Like,
if you think about what modern cars are now, like if you take like a Ferrari 458 or anything better, or any car, they're so unbelievably well engineered cars that anything that you do to it outside of one or two little things, you're gonna make it worse.
So true. Because you were telling me, because you used to have a 458. So like, just tell the audience what happened when you modified it.
You're making it worse. It's way worse.
What did you do to yours?
It had air ride on it, and then so you could lay it out. It was wide bodied, and then a friend of mine has a 458 Italia, so I'd never actually driven one unmodified.
Stock.
That one came modified.
Okay.
Then after driving his 458 Italia, that was lowered on Novatec and like done very proper, I would compare his to being a scalpel, and mine was a butter knife. Like, it was just, like, it was, and then right from that point, then you have to be honest with what your intentions are. Like, even the Evil Evo, even my new Porsche, it's like, are you going to track it? You're like, no, this would be horrible. If I wanted to build a track car, it'd be a completely different car. Like 100% different.
So if you're building a track car, you wouldn't make it, first of all, have this much horsepower.
No, because this thing's probably got 1,000 more horsepower than it would need to be a proficient track car. And then there's just so many others.
Air ride
there's so many other shortcomings. So like this thing's purpose was to fulfill my aesthetic of what my dream car was, and was to get your attention.
Yeah.
And it did. It worked perfectly. Is it a good track car? Absolutely not.
No.
It's terrible. Is it even a good street car? No, it's brutal. But you get in it.
It's not good for anything.
It's not good for anything, but when you get in
But
the
it
thing,
is, though.
It looks sick.
Because it got your attention.
Yeah, and there's just something. I mean, I don't know how it is for you, but I'm sure every time you see it, you're like, I don't know. There's just this sense of, I don't know, fulfillment.
because it's like, if you're like an 8-year-old kid and you're like, what you want to do with your car, this thing looks like it can do all of that.
Oh yeah.
So it's like, and then there's other cars that are way better. Like I would probably take this thing out against a Civic Type R right now and get decimated because I wouldn't be able to keep it in a straight line. So it's like, I get all those questions about like, you should have done this, are you going to track it? You're like, no, this thing was built just strictly to be as ridiculous as it possibly could be.
Yeah.
And there's no other reason. And it's like, could we build a track car? Like, I'm pretty sure we could build a good track car.
Yeah.
But it's not going to look or perform anything like this.
No,
So
definitely
you have. So what you're saying is you have to be realistic from the onset of what you
there's
want
give
the
and
car
take. Like
to be.
even my Porsche, its perfect iteration is almost stock. Like what could I do? I could put some Öhlins in it or some KWs and some better tires and lighter wheels if I wanted it to improve on it the way it came.
Yeah.
But me doing what I did, I made it worse. I made it way worse at one thing, but way better at getting your attention. So like you're gonna walk by a bone stock Porsche every day on, BBS. You're like, oh, that's a nice car. But my car is like, you either fully love it or you fully hate it. You're like, holy, that is ugly, or holy, that is amazing. You're gonna get one of those reactions. So it's way worse at that, but way better at the other side. And realistically, the way these people perceive these cars, it's like you're doing a $185 all the time.
Yeah.
Like
That's
all
so
the
true.
time.
That's
But you're not. You're cruising through traffic. You're doing 45. You're heading, taking your girl to dinner. Or you're not driving like that. Nobody is. And if you do, you're gonna get to see your car on a flat deck.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, oh man, it looks sick up there. Bye.
So like, what about for like your car? Again, you're building a 240. So what were the things that you had in mind before going to that build, and what has changed?
Well, my 240, I really, the only real clear thing that motivated me in building that car is I wanted to push myself into an area of like fabrication and like sort of understanding of aerodynamics and things of that nature that I never really got to experience on the day-to-day through business. Like we just don't do those types of things often, right? So that car for me is like that's the representation of that car in my way, in my vision of what that is. Whatever, but like, so my car is, it's kind of like a track car-ish. It's not going to be very good at it, I don't think, because of the nature of what I'm doing, but
I feel like it should be though.
It should be okay.
Based on what you've done, like it's a fully...
But I think I've gravitated more towards like the aesthetics of it, more like the artistic vision of what it's going to look like, more than what like specifically track focused.
Okay.
So it's just kind of just playing with new things. So my Z car is a full one-off space frame tube chassis. it like there's no Z car left in it at all. And if you really want to see what that is, if you haven't seen it already, check out some of our other videos.
Channel. Yeah, like and subscribe.
It's kind of been on hold for a little while I'm working on my actual daily.
So tell us about your Porsche, because I feel like would you call that modified? And like, what are your plans for it? What have you done? All of that stuff.
Yeah.
Because I think I would.
I mean, I have a 996 coupe. It's a cool little car, standard issue, came with a sunroof, as you would expect. Over here in North America is very common. And I'm just sort of, I'm getting an opportunity to sort of play around with like a lot more composite materials and things like that. So I'm making a slick top, sunroof delete out of carbon for my car, and
Nice.
that should be a cool little thing. We're gonna finish off more videos of that, but that's more. So my 996 is different than Tim's 996 in that his is what it is. Mine's a little bit more track focused.
Yeah, even the way it's set up now.
Like the way it's set
what
up.
you have on it, the
Like so,
coils.
my wheels. I went to like a -1 setup in my wheels. I went to a 17-inch diameter, and they're lightweight, forged aluminum fixie wheels. They're really nice. Had the boys do a really nice finish on them, and all the carbon stuff that I'm doing on mine.
Oh, it looks so good.
It's more
The carbon
geared
looks
towards
awesome.
like lightweight and sort of combining that because I want it to look pretty too.
Yeah, it's gonna look. And then
So-
you're gonna paint it. What are you gonna paint it?
So the color choice for my car is going to be the acid green. So it'll be so bold.
With the carbon accents, it's gonna look.
But we'll have to get deeper into that.
Glorious.
That'll be for another video. I think.
So, because you've driven his 996 before, and like, what did you think about it?
No, it's
The
great.
way it drives, yeah.
Yeah,
because
it's
you
an amazing car to
mentioned that it
drive.
was-
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's like one of those examples of being an improvement over stock.
Yeah.
So, but like I said, it's not gonna. You can't differentiate it from essentially a stock car.
Right.
You know what I mean? So unless you're actually driving it and experiencing it, it's not going to
Visually,
it's not going to grab your eye.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, ultimately when it's done, it's going to look unreal. But
will.
right now in its
Yeah.
stock form, stock paint,
Yeah.
you pull up to another one next to it and it's like you're not going to know.
Yeah.
But until you drive it, but when you drive it, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's more like just like an enthusiast sort of spec type
Yeah,
of
yeah.
build. But us being Trickfactory Customs, we want it to look a little nicer. So we're putting a little bit more effort into like the finishes and the quality in which everything is kind of brought together to become one. So that's kind of what that car is. It's that. But
Cool.
like Tim said, if we go to a Porsche meetup, it's gonna be just like every other one, maybe a little bit nicer.
I feel like
can
it's
hope.
gonna be very different.
When it's done. But I mean, like if you were to take it there right
Really?
now,
I mean,
it would be
no, it'll still stand out. The panels are.
all the way in the sky.
Yeah,
I mean, if you were in a stock paint job,
Yeah. It'll
all
look-
his modifications are very enthusiast based and they're internal.
Yeah.
yeah.
So whereas mine has a lot of the same internal ones, but it's so much
lot
more
of- yeah.
external as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
But it was built for a different purpose.
yeah.
It was built more of like, a shop project to continue to garner that attention.
And you can't walk past that car.
No.
Your
Yeah,
slant
whether
nose.
you like it or hate it, you can't
You
walk
can't
past
walk
it.
Oh,
past
shoot, what
it
is
without
this?
looking, and
No.
like it grabs your eye.
Yeah.
You look at it, and like it, whether or not it's a wow for I hate it or wow for I love it, you're still wow.
I still think the haters are just hating.
I think so too. That thing
I mean,
is
because the Porsche people out there are very passionate.
Yeah.
they take their cars seriously.
I wish you can make it to that Porsche purist meet. Oh,
Yeah, that would have been nice
that
to do.
would be so awesome.
We'll catch another
That,
one.
Yeah, true.
we'll be at another one for
Now
sure.
we'll put a GoPro, so be sure to see people's
I just want reaction
Yeah.
videos.
Yeah,
sure
that's that'll be fun.
And like we've kind of talked about this a little bit, but how do you keep yourself from going too much? Like when do you be like, okay, I've made too many modifications to my car, it's time to stop. Or okay, this is getting too wild, like it's time to stop, and maybe I don't know, just stop for now, and as opposed to just constantly.
Yeah, that's something we talk about all the time because because we do constantly get that like, are you going to track it? Are you going to track it? It's like you have to be realistic in your endeavors because like if you're going to get $80,000 into, I don't know, pick any car with the intent of making it a track car, there's no point. You could go buy a stock Cayman S and it's for the same money
So true.
and it's going to destroy your car.
Isn't that what happened with the Pikes Peak this year when the what's it called, the 992 Turbo S?
Yeah, just decimated everybody.
Everyone.
So it's like you again, it's being realistic in your things. Like if you go buy a Miata, you can reach out to a bunch of forum guys and find things that are going to be for that. But are you going to want to spend another 50 to try to make it something crazy? There's really no point because you're never going to get your money out of it. So that's when it's like the passion part takes like, no, I have to see this through to the end. I don't care what it costs.
Yeah.
But if you're being realistic then there's levels. You have to progress. Like I started with a Honda Civic, and then went from a Honda Civic to BMW 3 Series, and then progressed my way up the ladder because you can only push to a point where it's like, this isn't making sense anymore.
That's so good.
I can get a car that's already stock, more capable than this car, and then build that one up to the next level.
Yeah.
So ultimately, everybody ends up with a Porsche. Like if you're serious about it, like you have to get to a Porsche. You can't. Like
I was watching. We both watched Taylor Ray on YouTube.
Yeah.
But he did. I think he had a Miata. Then he LS swapped it.
Yeah.
But he got so far into the car, like chassis, everything, and almost got to the limit of what he could have put another like LS or crazier engine in it and all this stuff. But it was like, I've evolved more than this chassis, and so he goes drifting a lot, and so. He then got he got like a C6, and so because it's just a better better car in general, and so he's doing all the mods to that.
See that like he's a pretty smart builder in the way that he went about it because he kind of evolved with it, and he reached the limit of that car, and there's nothing else that he could do with that car in his competition world, so he had to step up the rung to the next tier of car, right? So smart.
Plus,
and that's what it is. He just had to be real with what his intentions were.
Most of us suck at driving too.
Yeah.
True.
Right. I mean,
so
that's right too.
Until you can, until you're at a place where like you're such a proficient driver that you've maxed out your current thing, like you shouldn't be worrying about all those other things.
True. No.
Like all these kids that are like this and that about track cars and are you going to track it and your car's not even validated until it's been tracked. None of these kids have even been to a track.
Yeah.
They've never been to a track day. So until you go and do that and you can't go any faster,
no more lap
like
times,
you've done 100 laps and you can't go any faster, then it's time to move on to the next platform.
Yeah.
But if I put you in a GT3 RS and then we put a professional race driver in it, he's going to beat you by like 15 seconds.
We cannot find half the limits of that car.
Shouldn't be worrying about doing all these crazy things to your car until you can get to a point where you're making the most out of what you have.
That's good.
Before you progress on.
That's good.
So like max that out and then to the next level, because it's easy a thing to say and on people's builds like, why didn't you put Öhlins in it? It's like, well, because there's $7,000 in these and I don't need Öhlins. Like it's realistically for what I'm using the car, I don't need that. So it's like all that stuff's got to make sense for what you're doing to it.
And this is another episode, the perfect format episode, but I just thought of name brand versus generic or like eBay brands. So I'm gonna write that down. But that's another topic that I'm shoot.
Yeah, we could go deep on that.
Yeah.
There's lots of comparisons on that on YouTube. There's like a million of them, but there's reality to that too. Like if you're just going for an aesthetic and your car's never actually gonna make it to the track, and the reality of your situation is you just want it to to be canned, buy the $500 coilovers. That's it.
That's all you're going for.
Doesn't matter.
But if you're daily driving it, then
plus what's the point of putting like $3,000-$4,000 coilovers in your car if you got a stance out like this and you're driving around on 2 inches of tire anyways? Like it doesn't make sense.
True.
So it's like there's really no point in buying that stuff. Like if that's what you want to do, then that's just buy within your thing. So
it's tough now. I mean, because the world is like so overly desensitized to awesomeness that
That's
it's
so
like
interesting.
We're all trying to push to the next level, but like the level that we're already at is already crazy. Like what else are you gonna do?
Social media is very interesting how it's made it, because I remember back in the day, like I'm like, oh, like if you see a Ferrari whatever it is or like 250 GTO in person, you're like, oh shoot, but like 10 years later you can see it on your phone versus like
every 5 minutes. Like the amount of saturation is insane.
Okay.
Yeah, when you saw a Ferrari as a kid, it was like an event.
You're like,
you're trying to pace this thing for as long as you possibly can before it turns off. Now, it's like I've probably seen 3 already today. It's like it just doesn't really hit the same. So everything has to be so crazy for it to make any kind of an impact.
Yeah.
And it's not really, it's still, even in our local market, you don't see this stuff very often, but social media gives you the impression that unless you're doing this, you're just not even worth talking about, which is not the reality. You don't see this stuff out there. There's definitely concentrations of it in California and Arizona where you can make use of it. Florida, But the rest of the world, this is not common stuff.
No,
California, it really isn't.
Yeah, you can't compete with it. You
my
get 4
gosh.
inches of rain a year. We could get 4 inches today. Like,
Yeah. When I lived there for 4 years, and so it's like every weekend, almost every day, there was a car show. Like, and it's like
you can have a car show on a
insane.
Tuesday.
Yeah.
Like here.
And the kinds of cars that are there.
Yeah.
Like there's the whole spectrum, like Koenigsegg's to like, I don't know, like 20s, I don't know, pre-war era cars that you see every day. It's mind blowing.
Just unreal.
Anyway, I
Unreal.
think that's, like, do you guys have anything else to add before we
No, we could
like,
end up
round
on
it
like
off?
8 other tangents.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we'll get to it.
You get me started,
we're
we're
gonna
never
way
gonna
through.
stop.
Yeah, so if you have any questions for stuff that we could talk about in the next show, or just have any questions for us in general, just comment in the comment section below. If you're listening to this on any of the podcasts, you can also comment as well. And we have an Instagram account for this podcast. So it's called Modify with Trickfactory Customs. So you can find us on Instagram, find us on all the podcasts that you listen to, wherever you get your podcasts. And that's pretty much it. And also rate the podcast too, so it moves up in the level of podcasting. If you made it this far to listening,
Congratulations to you.
congrats if you made it.
Thank you.
Leave a thumbs up if you like the video. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Trickfactory Customs. And with that said, that's pretty much it. We will see you next week. Bye.